This song is entitled Waiting on This Hill. So please join in if you feel so inclined. This hill, the hill being referred to, is Marrowbide Hill, where Baba's tomb is. So the theme of the song is searching across the whole world to find him, the avatar, with the right hand, and then waiting for him there. And the chorus goes, for 1,000 years I've loved you, and I feel that I always will. But for now, I'm waiting on this hill.
Yeah, this song I remember.
For 1,000 years I've loved you, and I feel that I always will. But for now, I'm waiting on this hill. For ages adrift throughout this world I've wandered, till I laid my head to rest at Marrowbide. And all the dreams that failed and hopes I squandered are the tears with which I kiss the feet of God. Oh, how I miss you, though I never knew my song was Meher Baba, Meher Baba, oh, song. For 1,000 years I've loved you, and I feel that I always will. But for now, I'm waiting on this hill. For 1,000 years I've loved you, and I feel that I always will. But for now, I'm waiting on this hill. Without your smile, my dreaming has no sunrise. My longing is love and shame you have shown. Where many beloveds came to dust as one rise, and the face in many mirrors is his alone. How illusions in time have passed away. Okay, so returning to the divine theme and a little bit of its history, coming up to God Speaks. I said a little bit this morning, but this chart illustrates the divine theme, right? Can you all see it? It's in God Speaks, chart 8A. It shows the journey of the soul. So now these are the elements in that storyline. It begins with creation, which is here, that moment of creation, the who am I moment, originating in the whim of God to know himself, which we'll be talking about soon. The evolution that leads to the evolution of consciousness through the 7 kingdoms of evolution, as Baba described it. The purpose of evolution, Baba said, was for the soul to achieve full consciousness. It's purposeful evolution. And once that has been achieved in the human form, evolution ends. And that launches one into the cycle of reincarnation. These are things we're going to be talking about this afternoon. Baba said you pass through 84 lakhs of rebirths. A lakh is 100,000. So 8,400,000 rebirths in human form to reach the beginning of the involutionary journey. So it takes a long time, actually. You go through many different planets and all that stuff. And then the involutionary journey is through the planes of the subtle and mental spheres. That'll be our topic tomorrow morning. And then this culminates in the realization of God. So those are the steps of the story of the divine theme. Now, Baba first gave versions of this in Infinite Intelligence, and we would have to spend more time with it before I think this really, remember this, Mary Kay?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
This is actually the divine theme, though it may not look like it. This is the crossing lines of thinking and imagination. Next week we'll talk about that. But the evolutionary journey is along here. This is stone. These are like the various kingdoms from plant to animal, and this is human form, and this is the realization of God. If we spent a long time with it, it would be very clear how this is a version of the divine theme. So Baba started explaining this in 1926, at least as early as that. This actually is another rendering of the divine theme. I won't have time to explain it right now. And so is this. So in Infinite Intelligence, you see, I actually, frankly, let's say some of the great ideas in history as they're conceived, like Newton's 3 laws of thermodynamics, or Einstein's theory of relativity, or things like this.
Right.
Well, man, this is small potatoes compared to the divine theme. The divine theme is the story of everything.
That's right.
It's the whole progression through the universe. And this was the first full, adequate expression of this idea in human history that I know of in Infinite Intelligence. Again, if somebody else knows me to be wrong, that the divine theme was previously explained by someone else, please do let me know so that I don't go on saying this. But I haven't been able to find this idea expressed before. The journey of the soul from the beginning to the end. So Infinite Intelligence, we see its first full expression. Now, in 1934, this actually is topically relevant because this takes us to Hollywood. Baba came to Hollywood and he wanted to have a movie made called How It All Happened. And when he was,
Really, this is Baba's film project?
Yeah, this was the main film project.
Wow.
And this book, Early Messages to the West, publishes this material. People don't seem to really know about this book, but the fifth section of the primary material in it gives this material that Baba prepared to present to the Hollywood. I don't know, Sean, have you heard of this?
No, but I'm familiar with the spiritual potential of that.
This is the material Baba prepared for a movie. He wanted a movie made. And he came to Hollywood to try to induce them to make it, in fact. So he spent about a month here. And I heard from Bob Street a lot of you know Bob Street. He'd been living in India for a long time, but he heard Adi, Baba's secretary, who was with Baba on that trip. And Baba would be presenting this stuff to the Hollywood executives. This was a low-profile visit. It wasn't a publicized visit at all. But Baba met with executives and writers and people who might have had the potential to get the movie made. And, they would be saying, well, Mr. Baba, your movie, we really can't do this. Our audiences won't understand this. And we really got to cut that out because that won't work, and we'll have to change this to this and that to that. And at a certain point, Baba just turned to Adi and said, what's the point? Everything's been cut out. So Baba wound up leaving, and the movie never got made. But all these materials turned up, so we published them a few years ago. And here is, I know you can't see it real well, I have other versions of it that are bigger. This is actually the divine theme also. The descending track, that's the journey of the evolution of the soul from stone down to human form. This is consciousness on one side and form on the other. The transverse track is reincarnation, and the ascending track is the involution of consciousness, as he called it later. And this chart, which is a little hard to see here, I think I have other versions. Here you can see the top half of it. I can expand some of it. Yeah, like here. This is, we'll be talking about this next week, Prana and Akash. Then they clash and you get the emergence of gaseous forms. And then there's the evolution of consciousness, stone, metal, vegetable, fish, reptile, mammal, etc. And when you get to the bottom, then you get, this is the transverse track of reincarnation, and then you have the involutionary journey. So Baba had this chart drawn when he was at Narbad. I think he had Adi prepared. It's very big. It's probably that big or so. And he took it with him on the boat to try to present his idea. And what the movie was, how it all happened, was supposed to be, was a complete account of the journey of the soul. Baba wasn't using the expression, the divine theme in those days. That's what it was, where you'd show the evolution of consciousness. And then once you get to human form, Baba gave a story of 3 souls through 5 lifetimes. The souls he called X, Y, and Z. Some of you must have read this, right? And in the, we published it in this book, Early Messages to the West. So in the first one, X, Y, and Z, they're cannibals. So X and Z are male cannibals, and Y is a female cannibal. So this is how you woo a female cannibal. Nowadays you might send roses, but when you're a cannibal, you take a nice hunk of human flesh and throw it to her. So he does that, and she finds it rather appealing. And Z gets jealous, and X and Z fight, and X kills Z. And that's the story.
Glad I can't remember those lifetimes.
Well, for some of us, they're quite recent. I shall check to see if my
That's the reason I live on Easy Street.
Easy Street, yeah. So the point is, Baba's starting the story at utter primitivity, basically animalistic behavior in human form. And then through the course of 5 lifetimes, these 3 characters come back. In the next lifetime, Z kills X, as a matter of fact. So, and Baba shows the progressive raising of the level of things until by the 5th lifetime, one of them has become a perfect master. So it's very inspiring. It shows how, these souls keep being linked with each other. but gradually the rise towards God occurs from the lowest to the highest. Very beautiful story. So Baba wanted a movie made, and it hasn't been done yet. But so when Baba wanted a movie made, here's the point I'm making, it was on the subject of the divine theme. It wasn't on love, it wasn't on any of the other things he could have made it on, it was on this subject. In continuing our story, this chart is really would be worth spending a lot of time on. But in the discourses, the three of you, and are there any others involved in the discourse reading group right now? Who? Magnolia. Oh. It'll be another 130 pages before you get the discourses on meditation. And there are 8 of them. And the 4th of them gives a reading meditation. It's this one. Assimilation of the Divine Truths. This is a different edition probably than the one you're using. You're probably using the 7th edition, the 1-volume edition.
7th and 6th.
Okay, this is the 6th. And in it, right here, section C here, Baba gives, put in new batteries, okay. Baba gives he describes a process for using this reading as a meditation. He says, in this part, he describes the steps. Every day you read through it, and then at a certain point, you don't even need to read through it literally anymore. You just review it mentally. That's the 2nd stage. And the 3rd stage, you don't even need to do that. You can just see it all at once in your mind. Has anybody ever done this meditation? Because I never have. You tried some of it? Yeah. I'm going to have to do it.
I have also tried.
What's that?
I have also tried.
You tried it?
I feel good.
Yeah.
So what do you read?
This section C here, it's right there. It goes on for about 10 pages. And the reason I'm mentioning it is an account of the divine theme, once again. It tells the journey of the soul from beginning to end. It's the best short account of the divine theme. The best I've ever seen. It's really, really wonderfully expressed. So this was first published in 1941, and actually got published as a separate little brochure. About 2 years later, Baba had a meeting at Mehrabad. This was during World War II, and it was very hard to have meetings then. The transportation wasn't there, and food was hard to get. But they arranged it anyway, 1943 in May. And Baba had, I think, about 100 men from around India come to Mehrabad. And the main focus of it was on these charts, which we have. Here's one of them, and the other is over on that side. You'll find these in God Speaks. They were redrawn at charts 9 and 10 in God Speaks. Are these same things? And they always say the chart, but I never have known which chart it was because there are 2. But Baba explained the topic to them all, and then they had I think a full day meditation on the chart, whatever it was. Yeah, Mary Kay has it there. Yeah, that one. In the booklet, which is out of print at the moment, it's there. The booklet looked like this. This got published later that year by Adi, and it contained the substance of the discourse that Baba had given, and also the charts. So I don't know of any other time in Meher Baba's lifetime when he had a sizable group of his lovers engage in a collective meditation like that. Does anybody else know of another occasion?
How about the boys?
There he had, but it was all individual. He didn't have a group meditation there that I ever heard of. There are 2 occasions I heard of where he had some of the Mandali do it for a little while. But not for long, though. But this is a group of his lovers, about 100 of them. They came to Mehrabad and they did and it was on these charts. The previous meditation, the reading meditation and the discourses is a reading. But this was focused on the charts. But the subject of the charts, once again, is the divine theme. And then we come to, and by the way, these charts, yeah, here they are. This is one of them. We could spend a whole day on this. This is fascinating stuff. It would take a long time to unpack it all, but this is amazing material, actually. But then we get to, by the way, that's you and me. Anyone here on the gross plane? If you are, that's you and me. If you're on the subtle planes, that's you, and if you're on the mental planes, that's you. Do you have any Sadhgurus in attendance? If so, that's you.
Next year.
Next year. We'll just put out a request. We would like to invite a Sadhguru.
I'll fly one in.
Please come. So this is, both of these recount the divine theme in very different ways. This is recounting the divine theme, showing the development of the ego through the course of the journey of the soul. That's what that one does. So now we have diagrams, and the culmination, as I mentioned earlier today, is God Speaks. And here we have the chart that Rano drew for the second. This wasn't in the first edition of God Speaks. There are 5 additional charts put in the second edition, and this is one of them. So now look at that. The first major presentation Baba gives in the 1920s that we know about, apart from the book, which one of you will be bringing forth now properly as soon as possible. But apart from that is Infinite Intelligence. There we get the divine theme, the first time that's ever been presented. When Baba went to Hollywood and wanted a public exposition of his worldview, his darshana to the world, it was the story he gave was the divine theme. When he gave a reading meditation in the discourses, it was on the divine theme. When he had a collective meditation by a group of his lovers focusing on diagrams, it was on the divine theme. And when he gave his great literary masterpiece, it was on the divine theme. The divine theme is really the centerpiece. It's not the only explanation Baba gave. Baba gave many other things. But this is what he wanted humanity to get, so far as I can see. This is what he put out front. And it's a story. It's a storyline. It's not a storyline about the avatar. It's a storyline about the journey of the soul. So that's where God Speaks fits into this particular line of development. Yeah.
So does this suggest that the crow is the last bird form?
It does look like it. Yeah. Well, Baba did say the crows can see ghosts. I don't know if that answers the question or not. He said that at a funeral, the only rituals worth doing are to feed crows and dogs. Just a little trivia, because both of them can see the spirit of the dead soul, the deceased person. So now I think we plunge into the book itself. Any questions about all of this historical background and context before we move on? Yeah?
Seems to me, if I'm wrong, please correct me. According to 8,400,000 times reincarnation,
Yeah.
It is only for gross form, or also in addition to that, it's also for scattered.
There's a wording in God Speaks. Well, of course, your subtle body remains all that fine. You don't ever discard that.
Yeah.
But you have 8,400,000 gross forms, and then you enter into the path. So you'll have more lifetimes after the 8,400,000. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. My understanding was it is when you get to the subtle plane,
Yeah.
then you have to reincarnate 8,400,000.
No, I've never read that. In fact, I've heard that once you get to the spiritual path, it's actually very fast. But it might seem like forever. I mean, if you're on the sixth plane and you're suffering the agonies of love for God, an hour might seem like a million years. I can well imagine, but I think it's very fast then. Because the problem with reincarnation is that you're just wandering around in circles. You don't know where you're going. It's not directed. You don't have the slightest idea who you are or why you came into human form at all. We're following these various human purposes. Oh, I want to have that woman. Oh, I want to have money. Oh, I don't want to have let so-and-so kill me. All these different human motivations. And whenever you fulfill one, then you get the opposite. So the wheel spins and spins and spins. That's why it takes so long. But once you get onto the path, you start to get a clear idea of what your purpose is. And then the path is direct again. It still is a long path. It's not going to happen in a snap.
In that numerous incarnation that you're talking about, isn't this, even though it's a circle and circle, isn't this that in the next birth you take it from where you left it off?
Yeah.
So still, it could be a involution.
Involution?
Involution in terms of progress of consciousness. I mean, does that consider any of those birth and death to be considered as the involution of your consciousness?
Oh yeah, while you're in the involutionary journey, you continue to have birth and death. It doesn't stop. So, you'd have more lifetimes. Baba used reincarnation to refer to this phase of the journey. But in point of fact, you continue to take birth and to die when you get onto the path also. I don't know how many more lifetimes, but there would be a bunch more. In the evolution of consciousness, you're also getting born and dying. But Baba didn't use the word reincarnation to designate that. He didn't give us a word. Maybe we could say transmigration, something like that. But what's different about reincarnation is, and this is our topic this afternoon coming into it, what is the difference between evolution and reincarnation? Actually, some of you would do this. Yeah, in your human form. And strictly speaking, there's no point to it anymore. I mean, once you've achieved human form, you don't need any more consciousness. You've got complete consciousness.
Well, you have to spend all the stuff you gathered.
Yeah.
Getting there.
That's the problem. And instead of doing that, sure, we spend it. And in spending it, we get a bunch more. That's the problem. You go round and round. There's a great line by Francis Brabazon about reincarnationary treadmill. He says, the merry-go round is not so merry when you start to realize that you keep going round.
That's right.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. No, it's not great.
It's not great at all.
It's
The
not great
merry-go-round
at
is
all.
not so merry when you start to realize that you keep going round.
That's
You can
right.
see it.
Buddhism really conveys that sense well, that you're
It
trapped,
does.
that they talk about the wheel of samsara. And there's
does.
really a sense that it's really, you're more or less trapped. So
Buddhism is
they
based
convey
on that.
beautifully, I think.
That was Buddha's starting point, yeah. Buddha started with that very insight, yeah. And Hinduism understands that too, the reincarnationary treadmill. But in evolution, it's a different deal.
Yeah.
It's purposeful. What is the purpose? You're gaining consciousness. Now, you're not thinking of it that way. It's not like a dog says, well, I think I need a little bit more of a tiger in me. I'll do a tiger incarnation. They're not consciously doing it, but intuitively or instinctively, the soul seeks whatever incarnations and experiences it needs to get full consciousness. Baba said it's a direct path to human form. There are no side trips there. So evolution is purposeful and necessary. But as soon as you've achieved human form, strictly speaking, you ought to just say, okay, I wanted to know, who am I? We're going to come to the whim in a minute. So, but before I could answer the question, who am I needed consciousness. Okay, I'm conscious. So, who am I? Well, that's what you ought to do. But in fact, instead of that, you've got all the samskaras, so you go through 8,400,000 lifetimes first.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's,
I have a bit of an outlandish idea I'd like to share and see what you guys think. Maybe this whole environmental catastrophic state that we're getting to extinction and our environmental state is just a cycle of our awakening, slowing down so that the humans can wake up with this pressure cooker that is arising.
well, you know,
Did Baba
Baba,
say anything? Yeah.
no, I don't know where Baba would, the movement hadn't come up at that time, but here's, Baba has said, this is about Mahapralaya now. You know how Mahapralaya is the annihilation of the universe? So, like, we're going beyond the annihilation of Earth to the annihilation of the universe.
Right.
He said it's happened trillions of times.
Right.
Trillions of times. All of this has happened over and over again. This is such an old story. I mean, can you imagine that? If it's 14 billion years before Mahapralaya, and that's happened trillions and trillions.
14 billion?
Yeah,
before one
for every
Mahapralaya.
occurrence, yeah.
And that's happened trillions and trillions of times. I mean, we can't even begin to comprehend the scope of this game. It's unimaginable.
But does it have to happen that way according to his architecture?
Well, Mahapralaya has to happen,
Yeah.
So isn't this
I don't know, maybe the LA group should pass a resolution prohibiting it.
No, I asked the Sadhguru, when we're doing the Sadhguru.
But where has
Yeah.
he said that, Baba said that it was a mini, it's going to be a mini Mahapralaya at the next trip next year?
You know, I don't know what Baba exactly said on those things. There's all this sort of folklore, but what of it is true, I just don't know. Yeah. So, let's see. Now, and coming to the first chapter. Let me get to it.
Easy?
All right. Here we go. Let's read out part of this page anyway. Let's see, because it's in the future we will have
how many times do we
generations of students will memorize it. I don't want to memorize God Speaks. You have to.
They teach it in school.
Huh?
They will
Some
teach it in school.
Oh, all the schools will memorize it, will get quizzed on it. So we might as well start now, right? Anybody want to read out a bit of this? Can you see it okay?
Sure. All souls, Atmas, were, are, and will be in the Oversoul, Paramatma. All souls, Atmas, are all one. All souls are infinite and eternal. They are formless. All souls are one. There is no difference in souls or in their
existence.
and existence of souls.
Oh,
In their being and existence.
okay, sorry. Our being got cut off.
Yeah.
Our very being was just cut off. Right.
There is a difference in the consciousness of souls. There is a difference in the planes of consciousness of souls. There is a difference in the experience of souls, and thus there's a difference in the state of souls.
Okay, I really wanted to call attention to that. So let's just take a look at this. This is going to be so famous in the future, this whole passage.
I think so.
Do you know of Vedanta?
I know where the center is.
The Vedanta Center, yeah.
Where is it?
It's on Franklin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's Vedanta.
Franklin, I got it.
Yeah. Okay. This is one of the, actually, I mentioned darshana earlier. It's like one of a vision or a reality. There are 6 astika, that's orthodox darshanas in Hindu philosophy. This is one of them, and it's probably the most famous. And the branch of it that is most important is, I'll write this word too. This is in purple for some reason. Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta, that's worth knowing. And this is what Advaita, do you know what Advaita means?
Non-dual.
Non-dual. It's actually, you can see our English in it. Dva, two. I was an Old English professor. Two comes from the Old English word twa, T-W-A, twa. They said the W in those days. And that's related to Dva, which means two. And A means not two. And what the great insight of Advaita Vedanta, its great breakthrough actually in the history of world religion, was the declaration that, here's Baba's expression for it, God alone is real. God is the only reality. And all this creation is an appearance and is ultimately not real. So it's not two. You and I are not we but one. That's a statement of Advaita. And this is how it was formulated in Advaita Vedanta also. You see the word in what we've just read, right? Atma. Do you know the word Atma? It's the Indian word for soul. Soul. Atman is Brahman. That was the great realization of the Upanishads in India. Brahman is reality with a capital R, or you could say God. The soul is God, right? The soul is one with God. Now this is a great divide among the religions of the world. The monotheistic religions don't accept this in their orthodox variants. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Zoroastrianism don't accept the idea that the soul is one with God. But Advaita Vedanta made that affirmation. That is, to use Baba's metaphor in this first chapter, the drop is one with the ocean. So what that says is that only God exists, nothing else exists. So in this very opening section, the first chapter, Baba establishes that theme. This first chapter is very Advaita. Baba is clearly grounding himself on the same insight that Advaita Vedanta declared to the world. By the way, do you happen to know the name of the greatest proponent of Advaita Vedanta?
In our time?
No, in all of history.
I'm thinking Ramana.
I don't know.
Ramana Maharshi.
Oh, Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi. Yeah. He is a great Advaita. Yeah, he is. I think he was perfect, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I would say Vivekananda.
Yeah,
would have been another great Advaita.
Yeah, he is.
So there have been many, but the real giant is Shankaracharya. He lived about the year 700, and he would often be counted as the greatest philosopher of India. I personally rank him as the world's greatest philosopher ever.
What's philosophy?
Well, it's Shankara, or sometimes he's called Shankaracharya. Acharya is a teacher.
Yeah.
And sometimes he's called Adi Shankara. Adi means the first. He's a towering colossus. I don't know, Plato, but greater than Plato in my opinion. Yeah.
Didn't you suggest, Ward, I think in one of your infinite intelligence seminars, that Baba actually had a minor advent as Shankaracharya?
I've heard people say that, and I just can't corroborate that Baba said it, but I do know that Baba said I was Shankara. He did say that. So, I mean, I suppose Baba could say, I was Rosie. I was that aunt, he could, it's true. But still, when he says I was Shankara, it does sound like there's something special going on there.
So Shankara has a lot of writings.
Yeah. Oh, he's a super colossus, like Plato, but I think he's greater than Plato himself. Anyway, he was the clearest exponent of this idea that everyone is God, that the soul is one with God. So God speaks is starting with this theme. Now, if you look at how far Baba got with it, he says all souls were, are, and will be in the Oversoul.
Yeah.
And he says that souls are all one. Baba hasn't yet exactly said that all souls are the Oversoul. Now, has he?
No.
He says they're in the Oversoul. Now, if he only took it this far, Orthodox Islam and Christianity they might not like all souls are one, but probably could go for they're in the Oversoul. I think that would be an acceptable view. But it took me, after reading God Speaks, as I've commented before, and maybe some of you had this experience, I don't know how many times I've read God Speaks, and every time Baba keeps sticking new stuff in, because I'm sure if it had been there before, I would have noticed it. But I keep rereading it, and I think, this? What? I never noticed this. And I never understood how this first chapter was organized. But then it was only about 2 or 3 months ago that I saw this. I noticed it. I'd seen it, but so now look at this. This is page 6 of that edition. Okay, the Atma can never be out of Paramatma. Do you know what Paramatma is, by the way? The Oversoul. Atma means soul. Atma means Brahman, right? Baba didn't really use the word Brahman, but Vedanta they did. But Baba used Para means transcendent or greater. So the greater soul, Oversoul, is a very good translation of Paramatma. The Atma can never be out of Paramatma. In that first sentence, he said all souls are in Paramatma, right? Because Paramatma is infinite and unlimited. How can the Atma come out of or have a place beyond the limitlessness of the limitless? Right? That makes sense. If Paramatma is limitless, how could anything be outside of it? That's inconceivable. It's a contradiction in terms. Makes sense. Okay. Therefore, the Atma is in Paramatma. That's what he said in the first sentence. But now he takes the next step. After establishing the primary fact that the Atma is in Paramatma, we go a step further and say Atma is Paramatma. That's the critical step. Do you see that? It means I am God. Right? Otherwise, God would be someone separate from me. The end of my journey might be where I'm in rapturous contemplation of God, and rapturous adoration of God. Christians would affirm that much. But the Christians would not affirm that I am God. But that's what this says. So he says, so you see the whole logic of this first chapter is first he's saying everything is in Paramatma, and now he's saying everything is Paramatma. And this is the illustration he gives to show this. How, he asks. And this is his famous drop ocean metaphor. Oops, I can't expand it properly. For example, let us imagine an unlimited ocean. Let us also imagine that we separate or take out 1 iota of ocean from the limitless expanse of this unlimited ocean. It follows then, this iota of ocean, while in the limitless ocean, before separation, is ocean itself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, if you have an iota of ocean and it hasn't been separated in any way. Well, it's ocean. Where's the distinction? By the way, this is an important point, I feel, to bring to mind when dealing with this ocean metaphor, here and many other places in Baba's literature. One, God is indescribable, right? And God is beyond understanding. So Baba gave us the figure of an ocean. And when I conceive an ocean, I close my eyes and I see this vast, dark ocean that goes on and on and on forever. That's my idea. Here's the problem with that image. The ocean of Paramatma has no space. So it's an infinite ocean without space being there. Now that's unimaginable, right? Can you imagine it? But we have to keep that in mind. So this iota of ocean is within an ocean where space is not, time isn't there either, but space isn't there. There's no extension. When Baba gave a meditation on this in the discourses, where he said one of the meditations is, I am the infinite within. Or you can have, I am the infinite ocean or the infinite sky. You could use those images. But Baba said you try to imagine that, but he said it's helpful to imagine that infinite ocean as being within yourself. And the times, I've actually never done this meditation either, except in groups like this, where we did it for a whole 2 minutes. That's all it would take. But I found even in 2 minutes, when I remembered to place the ocean within myself, it made it much more powerful. And I think this is the reason for that, because it helps to give a feeling for the sense that that ocean has no space. So remember this, the iota and the ocean, we're talking about a different kind of ocean. It's really beyond our imagining. So, okay. And is not there in the shoreless ocean as an iota of ocean, this is the iota, is not there as an iota of ocean, because every iota of ocean, when not limited by the limitations of a drop, is unlimited ocean. So this is the basic figure Baba gives for it. When you don't have any separation, every soul is identical, is the oversoul. That is to say, I am God. That's the foundation of Meher Baba's darshana, using darshana for his philosophy, right? The real foundation is the same foundation as Vedanta, in terms of its cosmic metaphysics, its eternal metaphysics. The soul is one with God. That's where this chapter gets to. Now, if we were taking more time on this, we could go into the whole next page. Baba gives in fact, I'll just mention, he says, when you have an imagined separation of the iota from the ocean, it is as if on the surface of this ocean, now of course this ocean doesn't have a surface. He's trying to give a metaphor for what's unexplicable. But so suddenly there's a surface, there's a bubble there. And the bubble is a figure for our false individuality, right? Charlie or Mary Kay or Sean or whoever it might be, where we imagine separation. So it's like the bubble is an imagined separation, but in reality, the iota is and forever will be identical with the ocean. That's the foundation of God's space. Yeah.
When you say identical with the ocean, does iota have all the attributes that the ocean has?
Yeah, the iota.
In its limitless way, I mean, not in an imaginary,
Absolutely.
because once you imagine it, you give attributes.
So this is before any kind of imagination has occurred.
Right.
And then the iota is ocean, because there's nothing to separate it. There's no reason to differentiate it at all. It is ocean.
This is before the consciousness developed.
Yeah, that's right. This is in the original state.
That's the original state.
When consciousness arises, then all the troubles start.
The problems.
It's eating that apple from the tree of
Garden of
food,
Eden.
the tree of knowledge. Once you start to know things, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Huh?
Yeah.
So now Baba, so this, you get the foundation. This first chapter is establishing this foundation above anything else. When it really comes down to it, I feel that Baba's closest affiliation in terms of his darshana, his philosophy, is with Advaita Vedanta. The bottom line is that. Now, Advaita Vedanta does not have this. It does not tell the dynamics of anything. It doesn't tell the story of the journey of the soul. India was really, really strong on the eternal side of things, but they weren't much interested in change. So this account does not allow for change yet. Vedanta doesn't give anything on that account. But on the eternal reality of things, Baba's account is basically Vedanta, so far as this goes. Now,
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
My question is back in page 1,
yeah,
if we have time.
yeah, I'm going back there actually.
Yeah, I would like, if it's possible, I got the soul and oversoul part on 6.
Yeah,
But this one, this what declares as a difference in consciousness of a soul.
right.
Um,
I was going to come back to these lines here. There is a difference in the consciousness of souls.
yes.
There is a difference in the planes of consciousness of souls.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference in the experience of souls.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, there is a difference in the state of souls.
Yeah.
Now, it was just a couple months ago that I finally sat down and said, okay, I'm really going to try to understand this after all these years.
Yes.
And what these 4 terms are.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have a slide here I created on those 4 terms.
Yeah.
Consciousness, planes of consciousness, experience, and state.
Good.
What does he mean by those 4 things? Right? Do you get this? Are you following this? I don't know these people. So, in other words, here's the problem Baba is dealing with. He's just said, all souls are in Paramatma. And in a few pages, he's going to say, all souls are Paramatma. Like, Al-Halaj says, Anal Haq, I am the truth. The Upanishad say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am God, I am Brahman. Okay, well then where did all this stuff come from? It's the obvious question. Where did an appearance of multiplicity come from if only God is real? That's the question he's asking. And he's starting to say there's a difference in these things. Now, consciousness, Baba's application of this idea at this juncture he's talking about what the soul is conscious of, in particular, the body identification. Now, I think I'm the body. Don't you guys? Think you're the body?
No.
Yeah,
I may,
I do. I mean,
or let's say I believe it I may say that I don't believe it, but my belief in it is prior to my not belief.
That's right.
For example, like I'm going to say, okay, I can say I'm not this body, but when I sit here on this stool and I look out here, I'm looking from about 6 feet from the floor and from this position in the room. Now, if I really didn't think I was the body, might I not be looking out from Carol's eyes? Or might I not be looking out from Baba's picture there and looking at it, seeing it from that angle of vision? But I don't. So the fact is, I actually do believe I'm the body. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another way to put that is maybe we say we don't believe it, but how do we act? We act
Right.
as if we believe it. Because if I really didn't believe it, if a car is rushing toward me
Right.
and I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be inclined to jump out of the way.
That's right.
So even though we say we don't believe it, we act as if we do.
That's right. The belief is so instinctive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Baba means by consciousness, is what your consciousness identifies yourself with. This is the first mistake. You identify with the body. Rosie, were you going to ask something? That I saw. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, did you hear me?
Somebody.
I raised it.
Oh. Okay, you raised it for her, I see. Because you're just identifying their bodies.
that's a
Jay doesn't believe he's the body. He raises his hand for somebody else. Now, the planes of consciousness in part 1. Oh, right. I messed this up. Sorry. The deal with the gross, subtle mental spheres. Okay. I'm going to go to this slide.
Why do you say hell of the problem?
What's that?
Body is the hell of the problem.
It is.
Yeah.
Body isn't identification with
It's
it.
body identification.
Yeah, it's how we perceive it to be.
But in the
It's an
meantime,
ego
also it helps.
It's most necessary for spiritual progress.
That's why where he wants us to find the reality.
Now this, I'm going to go to this chart. This is later in God Speaks. I think it's chart 7. So if you wanted to open to it, what page is it on for anybody who's looking here?
Did you write out for?
No, I didn't get straight. So go back.
Chart 7.
Chart 7 is on
It's like close
165.
to, right before the 10 states
165?
of God.
155.
Yeah,
Huh?
155.
155, okay.
or 165 if you have the later edition
Later
like
edition,
me.
Okay.
You mean early?
So if you want to look at it
No,
yourself, without having to look at the screen, it would be there. But okay, this is, I don't know, have any of you tried to figure this chart out before?
No.
Baba's charts are
very
really
hard.
worth studying. They really are. I've learned this. Okay, this is how you read it. You actually read this as grammatical sentences. Okay, so where are we? Let's start here. Man is gross conscious. You see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Through gross body equals small gross shadow of gross sphere equals big gross shadow equals gross nothing equals nothing into nothing into nothing.
Oh, wow.
So man is gross conscious through the gross body of the gross sphere. Right? You see that logic? Now there's a lot more in this than one might suppose. But let's look at some more of these. Now this is subtle conscious souls. Man is subtle conscious through the subtle body equals the small subtle shadow, right? A small subtle shadow of the subtle sphere equals big subtle shadow equals subtle nothing equals nothing into nothing. The subtle sphere is nothing into nothing, and the gross sphere is nothing into nothing into nothing.
What's the difference?
Well, let's get to the mental.
Okay.
Man is mental conscious through mental body equals small mental shadow of mental sphere equals big mental shadow equals mental nothing equals nothing. So when you get to the mental consciousness, you progress to the point of experiencing nothing. Whereas when you're in the subtle sphere, you're experiencing nothing into nothing. And the gross sphere, for those few blighted souls of us there, you're experiencing nothing into nothing into nothing.
That's why it's so awful.
Now, this is the small gross shadow, and actually the first chapter around page 4 explains this point. And this is the big gross shadow. And here's what Baba says about it. The body is the shadow of the soul, and the sphere is the shadow of the oversoul.
Wow.
You get that?
Yes.
So, for those of you who have read Infinite Intelligence, this links into an enormous theme there. We could spend a long time on that because it's quite important. It's much more important than I would have known. This is called thinking the imagination. Remember thinking the imagination in here? The thinker thinks, and this is the imagination. So the gross sphere and the subtle sphere and the mental sphere are nothing. They are nothing. And that's what we're experiencing. And what are these bodies of ours? You know, there's a really good diagram that illustrates it beautifully, but I would just spend a little time pulling it up. I don't know if you remember the eye and the lion in Infinite Intelligence.
Yeah.
That is, there's an eye, and there's the door. Any of you with the book, none of you have it on hand. I have the slide that it would take.
I have it in bookstore if you need.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Oh, okay.
But there's a door,
Yeah.
but there's a little hole in the door. And on the other side of it, there's a shadowy lion there. And if the whole is this big, I can see this much of the lion. If the hole is that big, I can see a lot of the lion. And if the door is completely open, I can see the entire lion. Baba uses this as a metaphor. I'll use God speaks language for experiencing the universe. If you are stone form, the hole is tiny. And you can experience only a little teensy bit of the universe. The lion is the universe, right? The creation. If I'm a rooster, I'm hot stuff by the time I'm a rooster. The hole is reasonably big, and I can see a fair bit of the lion, means a fair bit of the universe. But if I'm a human being, the door is wide open and I can experience all of the universe. In human form, we can experience creation completely, because we are completely conscious. And what is creation? Nothing. It does not exist. It's not there at all. Only God is real, right?
Right.
So, from this point of view, what is the body? The body is an opening. It's an opening. You get that? Our consciousness needs to experience somehow, right? And to experience, we have to experience something. Well, it's the universe. It's all nothing, but that's all that's there. Okay. But to experience the universe, I need a hole. I need an opening. I need to be able to get to it, don't I? Right? Well, what good is having consciousness if there's no access? The body is an opening for consciousness. That's what it is. So this little shadow is the little opening through which you experience the big shadow. Do you understand that concept there?
Yeah.
And it all is shadows. None of it's there. So actually, this is part of the core of the book Infinite Intelligence. We'd have to spend 2 or 3 hours to really develop this idea and make it. I don't know, some of you might remember from last year where we talked about thinking the imagination. This is thinking the imagination is what this is about. So that's what the first chapter is talking about. So, do you follow this?
Yeah.
In other words, consciousness needs to experience the universe, and it needs a medium through which to experience the universe. The medium is the body. So consciousness identifies with the body. It says, I am this thing. I am a dog, I am a sparrow, I'm an ant. You just take without any question that that's who you are. So in those 4 things that we were talking about, consciousness identifies with the body, and through the medium of the body, it experiences the plane of consciousness, or the sphere. Okay? These are the definitions of the terms Baba is using. You get what I'm doing? I'm going through those 4 lines there, saying what they mean. So consciousness identifies with the body, and through the medium of the body, it experiences the sphere, or the universe. This whole universe that we are experiencing is completely imaginary. It does not exist at all. That's what Baba has said. It's pure, it's nothing masquerading as everything. Okay, and once you've done that, then you can start to have experience. Through the medium of the body, the soul experiences the sphere. Yeah?
I have a question previously. We're all in imagination.
Yeah.
What's the source that allows us to see something as, that we all recognize, like the color, say? I see something as green, someone sees something as green. What is the source of that comprehension or shared?
Yeah, Baba hasn't exactly talked about that question, so we would just have to bring our own inferences to it. But it must be that in a collectivity of different persons, there are common sanskaras, because we have common pasts and links. So there's a body of sanskaras that all fix on the same thing. But we would all experience it to the degree that our sanskaras allow us to do so. For example, okay, Jay, you're sitting in that chair, and you're wearing a blue shirt. Some people, so there's some kind of sanskaras there connected with you. Okay, well, I might happen to have noticed that you have a blue shirt, but then Mahmoud might not notice your blue shirt. So those sanskaras might not even be part of the background he brings to experiencing you. So you'd experience people according to your own sanskaras. It would have to be something like that. Baba never really explained the point. It's sort of how many different souls operate within that scene. So experience, all of this is so that we can have experiences. So the consciousness has to identify with the body, and through the medium of the body, experience the larger shadow, which is completely nothing in its reality. If we had read Infinite Intelligence, you'd know that Ishwar is constantly making nothing look like everything to us. And the state, the totality of all these factors produces the state of the soul. A fundamental element in the state of the soul is bondage, or the freedom from bondage. So like, if through the medium of the gross body, I'm experiencing the gross sphere, my state is gross consciousness. I'm bound to the experience of the gross. So that's what these 4 terms are being used for. And the next couple chapters, really, Baba is explaining the evolution of consciousness in these terms. If you take note of them, what these 4 terms are and what they mean. Now, so then after having explained this is where we were. There is a difference in the consciousness of souls, there is a difference in the planes of consciousness of souls, there is a difference in the experience of souls, thus there is a difference in the state of souls. Now he starts, most souls are conscious of the gross body, Sthula Sharir. So here he starts talking about consciousness, right? We have these 4 terms, consciousness, planes of consciousness, experience, and state. Here's about consciousness. Here he's talking about the planes of consciousness, the gross plane, subtle plane. Here he's talking about the experience that you have through that medium. And the next page, this is actually about the state. And I won't spend more time on this, but this is where we need to get to. Now he asks the question, he said there's a difference in these areas. Consciousness, planes of consciousness, experience, and states. Okay, we have differences. Where do these differences come from? That's the question. What's the cause? This is really big. If now all souls are in the Oversoul and are all one, then why is there any difference in the consciousness, in the planes, in the experiences, in the states? We've been given that there are differences, but why are there differences? And this is really the cornerstone of Meher Baba's philosophy, or his darshana. The cause of this difference is that the souls have different and diverse impressions, sanskaras. Sanskaras are the foundation of it all for Meher Baba. He said that a number of times. He said in the 20s that no one has ever explained sanskaras in the way that I have. So then the rest of the chapter does a lot of development on this, on how sanskaras produce all these differences in the states of souls. We're going to talk later on a little more about what sanskaras actually are. So these are some points from the first chapter then. It's really laying foundations, the foundation of Advaita Vedanta. It's talking about some of the key terms, consciousness, planes of consciousness, experience, and state, those things. And it gets to sanskaras as the root of it all, as the root and cause of the whole thing. Now, having reached this point, why don't I take a look at my notes? This isn't the one, sorry. So, we get to the second chapter.
Crack the door a little bit.
Fine by me.
But it interferes, doesn't it, with the light for his filming?
Well, let's see what the light does first.
It might be down below.
Put on the AC.
For me, it's all right.
And it's not right in my
What do you say, Charlie? What's your?
Let's doable.
It's doable?
Yeah. No more. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That much?
You've hit the threshold.
Okay. Now, we're just going to go lightly through creation, evolution, and reincarnation in the next hour. We can deal with all that. Sure. So these are some of the Mayor Baba's creation story, the initial urge, the scientific account of creation and evolution and its discontents. A few words about that. Evolution of Mayor Baba's account. Then we get to reincarnation. God Speaks, part 4, deals with reincarnation. God Speaks doesn't deal with reincarnation all that much. You'll find a lot more elsewhere. And the title is Reincarnation in the Impressionless Equipoise Consciousness. And then Sanskaras and their representation in discourses in infinite intelligence. Then the Buddhist account of karma, Pratitya Samutpada, and the 12 Nidanas. Have any of you dealt with Buddhism at all? Pratitya Samutpada or the Nidanas? Okay, and then Baba's discourses. Obviously, we're not going to get to all of this, but I'm just marking the topics. And all of this pertains to fundamental themes of great importance to most people, like cosmic justice, free will, and predestination. People all the time ask, where's the justice in this world of ours? All the schnooks always seem to get away with it. And all the good people always seem to get punished for their goodness. God can't exist. God can't be just. Okay, well, and reincarnation karma really explains the underlying rationality of the whole thing. Now, how should we're going to really come back to this a lot more next weekend, but how did creation originate?
Say that question?
How did creation originate?
Oh, how did it originate?
When? Yeah, the original urge. And this chapter talks about that. Now, this isn't a way of approaching an issue that we'll get to more on next weekend, but Baba used several words for it. One was the initial whim, and then another was the urge. What do you think about those two words? Do they mean exactly the same thing to you?
Whim and urge?
No, it doesn't to me.
Yeah. What about urge?
Urge presumes there was an idea before it.
Yeah.
Just kind of pushed forward.
Urge seems to imply a motivation.
That's what I'm trying to
A maybe not fully self-articulated motivation. I may not be fully conscious of what it was, but I did have it. But a whim is unmotivated. So Baba, both of those words occur with reference to this, which is an interesting point. I don't know, what do you think about that? Okay, what is the whim?
So it's good.
For God, yeah.
Between the whim and the urge, maybe the urge was always there before there was a whim, but the whim is the motivation. The whim is that there was no time having to do with it.
Yeah. By the way, I think it was Scott McKay, who some of you will know, looked up whim in the Oxford English Dictionary. I should do this too, and found, it gives etymologies, so, word histories. And whim doesn't have any source. It just popped into the English language all of a sudden from no known source. This is perfect, isn't it? Baba gave an analogy for a whim once, the whim. He said, let's suppose a man is walking beside a calm pond or a lake, and he suddenly takes up a stone and throws it in. I mean, I've done that so many times. Have some of you done that?
Yeah.
And you might ask, well, why did you do it? I don't know. Had a whim. It really expresses it. There's no special reason. You have a whim to do it. And in Beams, the book Beams, which Carol showed us earlier, Baba talks about that and the whim, and says that you can do it for anything, you can ask, what's the reason for this? And then you give a reason. And you say, what's the reason for the reason? And you give a reason for that. And what's the reason for the reason for the reason? It's like there's an infinite regress. And at the end, all you can say is that it's a whim. There's no reason for it. It's unmotivated. It's...
How about the idea of the faith that it was a latent state in God, in beyond a state of consciousness?
Yeah. So it expressed a latent state, yeah. In the beyond state, everything is in latency. Do you know the word, I'm going to show this. Some of these things really come up nowadays in a lot of the discussions you'll find if you get into the right sorts of topics. But teleology. Do you know the word teleology?
Yeah.
Teleology
You taught it.
is the study of purposefulness in things. It said, for example, that Aristotle's philosophy is teleological because innately, in his account, everything has a purpose. Now, a pure materialist has a non-teleological view of the reality. There is no innate purpose. It's just matter and energy jostling against each other, and consequences come out of it. They are not intended by anybody. They're unmotivated, you might say. So this is a really fundamental question. Is reality, is there an innate teleology or is there not? The word, it comes from the Greek word telos, T-E-L-O-S, which means goal or purpose. And it seems to me whim and urge, those two words, show the same thing from different points of view. And let's put it this way. From God's point of view, from God as God, does God lack in anything? No. God doesn't have anything to get out of creation. So from God's point of view, it's a win. Just have a win. But from our point of view, as soon as the creation comes into existence, then a purpose comes into existence. And then you can say, well, there was a latent urge to fulfill this purpose. So it's like if you're looking at that whim from the creation's standpoint, you'd say there was a latent need, there was a latent urge, there was a latent purpose. But if you're looking at it from God's transcendental purpose standpoint, I didn't need it. God lacked for nothing. It was a whim. So does this make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing viewed from these different angles of vision, and both are quite true. You know?
Well, didn't God lack consciousness to begin with? That's why this all happened. So God could get consciousness.
But you know, God didn't even lack consciousness. God was neither conscious nor unconscious, is what it says in the 10 States of God. It's all latent. Let's put it this way. The question did not arise. All these things, the question did not arise. But as soon as the question arose, then infinite unconsciousness would say, hey God, you lack consciousness. And infinite consciousness would say, I've got consciousness. You know, at the moment the whim occurred, infinite unconsciousness and infinite consciousness arose at the same instant. God Speaks says this. But, so you get the distinction between unconsciousness and consciousness. The moment the whim occurs, that difference is enunciated. Do you get that? Do you follow that idea? But before the whim arose, the question had not been asked. By the way, what is the question?
Who am I?
Who am I? That's right. And I mean, this is I don't know, did anyone before Baba ever explain the origin of creation in those terms? I think Ramana Maharshi might have, but that was after Baba had already done so. The whole creation arose because of the question, who am I? It's so beautiful, and it's so simple. Yeah?
How does this relate to destiny versus free will at the level of the individual? No matter how it's
He's going to
do you see anything about that?
You know, I better put off that question because it's a big one.
Yeah.
But it's a most interesting question. Yeah, no, it's very relevant to this. But yeah, no, I have quite a lot to say about that actually. But the whim, you might say, is the source of both destiny and free will. Now, in Infinite Intelligence, Baba says that all creation was created by desire. Why would desire be another word for this? What is it a desire for?
Urge?
For what?
To know oneself.
Know yourself.
To know yourself.
That's the root of all desire. That is to say, I want to know God. Now, the problem with desire is, because the samskaras, we keep mistaking what it is that we want. You know, if I'm a hungry tiger and I look at a lamb and say, I want you, you know, or whatever the desire's object is. But underneath all of that, what is the source of all desire is the whim to know, who am I? That's what drives desire. So, in a sense, all right, love. Why is love desire? I mean, it actually is. Even the highest love. The highest love is the highest desire.
But it's a hard desire.
Yeah,
Which is not forbidden.
It's a desire that's purified of all other sanskaras. Let's take Mara. Baba's Mara.
Yeah.
That's desire. It's desire for the right thing, finally.
Pure.
The problem with our desires is they've always focused on an external life. It's like that body consciousness we were talking about. When you say, I'm the body, then you immediately project onto the nothing and say, I want that. That's the problem. But when desire has been purified of all sanskaras, of all false images, instead of this mask or that mask or this personification or this fraud or that fake, instead of those things, when I start to see what it really is, I want God. Why do I want God? Because in truth, I am God. The iota is the ocean. So the desire is another, that's very clarifying, I think. Understand the root of desire is the whim of God to know himself. It's just falsely, it's found false objects. That's the problem with desire. So Baba says in God Speaks, in a number of places, the mind has three aspects: thoughts, feelings, and desires. And desires are the highest. And when I first read that, I thought, it's kind of odd. But it's actually not odd. Because when you really find out what it is that you really want on the sixth plane of consciousness, then true love awakens. True love is the purification of all desire. So in a sense, that's where love would fit into this whole storyline, even though Baba doesn't use the word very much.
So is that the reconciliation between whim and purpose?
That's what I would say anyway. Whim and urge. Urge is designating that in terms of there being a latent purpose. And whim is designating the whim of God without reference to purpose at all. So to me, the instant the whim has occurred, there is a purpose. Before the whim has occurred, there is no purpose. Right? If God is all-sufficient, God is neither conscious nor unconscious. There is no attribution at all you can give to God in the beyond state. Well, purpose doesn't come up even. But the moment the question is asked, there is a purpose. So Baba's account of the universe is teleological. The instant creation has come into the story, right?
Right.
The moment God has asked the question, who am I? Everything is purposeful. This is not a purposeless universe at all. But before God asked the question, there was no purpose because God lacked for nothing. There's a stupid joke my dad told me once. There's this little kid, wonderful little boy, and he's a wonderful, ideal kid, but the only problem is he doesn't ever say anything. But in all other ways, he's perfect. But then they're sitting around the breakfast table. He's about 4 years old. And suddenly he says, "Please pass the milk." I said, "What? What? You never said anything before. Why did you do it now?" And he said, I never needed anything before this. There's never any shortcoming.
Yeah.
Before the question arose, God was perfectly content. And there is no purpose. So ultimately, there is no purpose. Ultimately, reality is non-teleological. But the instant the whim arises, purpose comes into it. So Baba's whole account of evolution, reincarnation, and involution is teleological. It clearly is. There's a purpose that drives it all. And that's a respect in which Baba's account of evolution differs from that of materialistic science. Is somebody wanting to bring something up?
And where does the beyond God fit into this? In between the beyond and the creation?
Yeah, we'll say a lot more about that in the last session. But Baba does say this about the whim, that the whim in the beyond state of God, the whim becomes inconceivable. In the beyond state of God, it wouldn't even be inconceivable. But the moment it becomes inconceivable, it happens, of course. And the moment, we'll have to read this, it's an amazing passage. It's like a 2-year-old. If you say, "That's out of the question," well, of course, the 2-year-old will promptly set about to do it. So the beyond state is like a 2-year-old. As soon as the whim becomes inconceivable, it immediately arises because of its inconceivability. It's a beautiful section in the 10 states of God. And the moment a whim arises, the question, "Who am I?" you have ignorance and knowledge come into existence then. Because "who am I?" indicates ignorance, right? I wouldn't ask such a question if I were not ignorant. Infinite unconsciousness is there. And the moment the question has been asked, the answer is there. I'm God. Those two states of infinite unconsciousness and infinite consciousness arise at the same instant. At the same instant they arise. And the entire journey of the soul is from infinite unconsciousness to infinite consciousness. That's all it is. If we're going to get 10 states of God, Godish about it, that chart, it's from 2A to 2B. 2A is infinite unconsciousness and 2B is infinite consciousness. The whole journey of the soul is just to do that. That comes out of the beyond state of God. And the beyond state, these questions the question didn't come up yet. Yeah. John?
Can we talk about then why we've done this a trillion times? What was that? Well, I mean, why has the universe been, destroyed and reborn a trillion times? And is he talking about that? Like, hasn't that question, hasn't that desire been fulfilled?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, is that like one whim? Or is it whims ad infinitum?
Yeah.
Well, Baba did say, this is in the stuff he gave to Francis Brabazon. That's the source for that. But he said that after Mahapralaya, this is on the universal scale. You know how on the universe, through the small shadow of the body, you experience the big shadow, which is the universe, right?
The lion.
Yeah, the lion, right. I should show that because that's such a great illustration of it. So when I go to sleep, it's like Mahapralaya, but it's on the individual scale. So it's like going to sleep. It's exactly the same thing, except it's on the universal scale. But he did say that after Mahapralaya, there is a new wind. The wind surges again.
Out of the beyond.
Actually, he said, you go back to the beyond state. And out of the beyond state, the wind surges. But then Baba asked the question, this is the notes to Francis Brabazon. Well, this would explain how that happens after the first creation. You go back to the beyond state and the wind surges out of the beyond state. But how did it happen the very first time? That's the interesting question. And darn it all, they never got back to the topic. So the answer is not given.
maybe it's not important.
Well, Baba himself asked the question. He said, this is the interesting point. How did it happen the first time? Baba himself asked this. And he was going to answer it, but the bugger Francis Brabazon never brought it up again, or Baba insisted on dropping the body.
It's in the book that we're hiding.
It's in the book. You guys, yeah, why are you asking? You should pay.
I'm testing.
You're just testing to see whether, okay, all right.
So Lord, when you
Yeah.
said the both arise at the same time,
Yeah.
made me think of a battery, like plus and the minus,
Yeah.
and then the electrons circle from one side to the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that like the human journey, the soul's journey?
The opposite, yeah. Baba gave a beautiful analogy in the 10 States of God to anticipate. He's explaining the same point. You'll find this in the section on the whim and beings, by the way. That's another place. A beautiful explanation. But Baba says, how is it that infinite unconsciousness and infinite consciousness can arise at the same instant? How can that happen? And Baba says, or it's actually Eric's writing, but obviously Baba explained it to him. He said, this is something that belongs to the domain of reality, and the human intellect can't understand it. You just have to get God realized before you understand it. But then Baba says, but so that you can have some inkling of an idea and not just have to take it as a mystery that you can't understand, Baba gave this analogy, and it is a magnificent analogy, in my opinion. He said, take a fetus in a mother's womb, and the fetus is slowly developing, and at a certain point the eye starts to develop, and at a certain moment the eye is completely developed. At that instant, the baby develops the power to see and to not see at the same moment. Whether it sees or whether it doesn't see, in point of fact, it develops those two capacities concurrently. Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. It's so clear to me. That's how it is. Those two, infinite consciousness and infinite unconsciousness, arise at the same instant. And they do so at the moment of the whim. The whim produces that differentiation of states. In the beyond state, there's no question of it. I keep coming back to this, but you have to ask the question. Nobody asks the question. And what is the question? Who am I? The moment that happened, everything else happened. This is such a beautiful account of the cause of creation. So the first desire is the first sanskara. To come back to that. So what is the first sanskara? Who am I? That's it. All began from that. And everything else in the 8th chapter of God Speaks, Baba will talk about the procreation. Once that's started, it procreates and proliferates to a hyperabundance of forms, like you see here. All of those. So now we'll go back to the moment of creation in a later session. We'll bring Prana and Akash into it, which is really fascinating. That's not in God Speaks, but it is an infinite intelligence in other places. Yeah. But now the evolution of consciousness.
Or before you move on to that, just this tumbles in my mind.
Yeah.
That first desire or samskaras, and the urge to, the question come up, who am I? Does this get associated with God in beyond state? Because isn't God desireless by definition?
Yeah, well, when we get to the 10 states of God, we'll look at all of that. Okay. What happens to God in the beyond state is the differentiation between state A and state B.
Okay.
The whole problem is how to get to state 2B. Like Hamlet asked, to be or not to be?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
So we're going from state 2A to 2B. That's the whole journey. Now, once that journey starts, you're no longer in the beyond state. You're in state 4, the embodied soul, and so forth. We'll talk about that in the last session, actually. That's why the 10 states of God really is the master account in Meher Baba's Darshana. But we get to the evolution of consciousness. I was talking about how Vedanta really articulates the foundational truth that Atman is Brahman, that Atman is Paramatma. That the iota, the drop is the ocean, that I am God. That's, when it really comes down to it, that's the bottom line. But now we start to get into things that Vedanta never did go into. And as a matter of fact, none of the monotheistic religions, well, all the religions would have something to say about the journey of the soul. But actually, now here's where the West can actually make a contribution, and has done so. And that's with the dynamics of change. And the evolution, the whole idea of evolution is a Western idea. And of course, I'm sure most of you would know the great name associated with evolution is Darwin, right? Charles Darwin. So Baba was taking on that idea in a certain way. But what do you think? What is the relation between Darwin's neo-Darwinian evolution and Baba's evolution? Are they the same, or are there significant differences?
Well, because Darwin's theories were so far broader than just the survival of the fittest, so I don't know.
What is the survival of the fittest? How does that work with Darwin?
It's the evolution of our survival based on our strengths or our ability to adapt.
Yeah, like let's suppose Elaine and I are both rabbits, and Elaine can run half a mile an hour faster than I can. And what catches rabbits? Foxes. A fox, we're both in the same distance from a fox. And the fox sees us and takes after us. And Elaine goes half a mile an hour faster than me, right? Well, I'm the one who gets eaten, right?
Right.
So Elaine goes on to have 1,000 little bunnies, and I don't. As the more fitter of the two, her genes survive, and her, thus she enters into the gene pool, and I don't. That's Darwin's idea. Survival of the fittest. And also, things changes occur by random mutation. Have any of you studied this biology? I've been reading,
And there's also another big aspect of his work that's very non-competing as well. I guess that's
well, there's reciprocity and altruism and all those things figure in. And evolution would favor those behaviors which best conduce to the creation of progeny would be those genes that survive, and all kinds of behaviors, competitive, cooperative, all kinds of things like that. But the one thing that's common about all of it is that it is non-teleological. That is to say, there's no underlying purpose. It's all from material phenomena. It's all from genes, which ultimately has a biological, chemical, material basis to it. There's not any innate purpose. How does that compare with God?
I think the soul has to experience everything that is not God. Finally come to God. So all these forms, you have to take the forms in order to experience the next thing that's not God. You have to keep moving forward. The forms are just there where you're going to jump from one thing to another too.
Yeah, you need a completeness of experience. And you have to try all alternatives on the road to that. The human form, the one thing we've got is we're complete. We have a maturity of experience. We've tried out all the alternatives in getting to it. Because to get full consciousness, you need to have tried. You need to be a prey. You need to be a predator. You need to be strong. You need to be all these different things you have to have done. So in this respect, Baba's account is teleological, is it not? It's driven by a purpose. And what is that purpose?
To experience purpose.
Everything.
Purpose
Know who
as
you
this.
Not
In the end.
experience
In the
everything,
end.
to know who you are.
That's true. The end is purposelessness. But until you achieve purposelessness, you're all consumed by the purpose of experiencing purposelessness. Yeah.
And that's how evolves the progress of consciousness.
Yeah, so the evolution of consciousness is motivated. So that's a fundamental difference between Baba's account and Darwin's.
Right.
Darwin's is random mutation and natural selection and the survival of the fittest and all those sorts of things. The survival of the fittest fits into Baba's story. In his chapter on evolution, you'll see the phrase, the survival of the fittest. The soul experiences that. It becomes more aware of it in worm form, especially in worm form. It really is, the soul starts to become aware of that. In plant form, it's not exactly conscious of it. It's doing adaptive behaviors in plant form, that's true, but it becomes more articulately conscious. And as instinct involves, the instinct, that's where the soul really becomes conscious of survival of the fittest. I have to survive and I'll kill others to do it. The soul needs to do that, needs to have that experience. Actually, there's an evolution from instinct up to intellect in human form.
Yeah.
And then when you get advanced, intellect turns into other things. So this is a big difference. Baba's evolution does show a progression of forms in terms of greater complexity, more and more. But the big difference that Baba's account gives is that there's a purpose in it. And here we can say more about that, and that will be in the relation of these two words. I think I have a slide on it, actually. Consciousness and samskaras. These are big concepts in Baba's darshana.
Yeah.
What happens in terms of, in the first of these, through the evolutionary journey? What happens to consciousness? Or let's put it this way. I don't know if you can see this. All right, over here. Where does it, where is consciousness here, stone form? Huh? A little hole in the wall. It's pretty tiny. It's infinitesimal. The tiniest little flash. Point, prick, point, prick. Consciousness is there, that's all. So God has asked the question, who am I? And the first thing that happened was God became a stone. What's the problem? Can God answer that question with the tiniest little pinprick of consciousness? No. What does God need before God can even set about the problem of answering the question, who am I? He needs to be awake, he needs to be conscious, he needs to be wide awake. And stone won't do it. Stone won't do the trick. So that, you see how the whim drives it. The whim is the driver of evolution. Before that question can be answered, the soul has got to wake up. See, there's a purpose for all of it. So when Baba depicts evolution, there was a diagram I had earlier which showed between consciousness and form, there's a zigzag. And how I'd explain that, I don't have it easily available here, is that, like, let's suppose you get to a certain form, and my consciousness has kind of progressed beyond the limitations of that form. The form is not quite adequate for my consciousness. So then I jump, and maybe I jump to a form that's a little bit beyond me, right? What's next after frog form? Fish. That'd be a big jump. I don't know, reptiles. Let's say a dragon, a Kamina dragon. What do they call it? Komodo dragon. I'd say that's beyond frog, huh?
Oh, way beyond.
Way beyond, okay. Well, maybe you wouldn't go that far. But you jump to another form that's kind of a little bit beyond you.
Salamander.
A salamander, okay. And then gradually, after getting eaten up and having had a bunch of failed careers as a salamander, after a couple of tries, you get it to work, and your consciousness catches up, okay? And then your consciousness kind of gets beyond the salamander. And then I go on to whatever the next after salamanders. I do another jump. So the thing is that it's not just a survival of the fittest and random mutations and an arbitrary material process, which is what materialism inhabit. It's a purposeful progression. And through it, I get more and more and more sanskaras. Like, you know, I'm a frog and I'm out there in my lily pad and I'm making lots of noise. And I think I'm pretty good because my rivet is more riveting than anybody else's. And lo and behold, an alligator comes along and I'm done for. Okay, well, I've got new kinds of sanskaras of being eaten up while I'm sort of on my ego trip. Yeah. So then my next lifetime, I've got that new little bit of experience, you know, that I bring. I'm a little bit conscious of alligators. Maybe in another couple of lifetimes, I'll become an alligator, just to try out that end of things. So you get more and more sanskaras, and sanskaras are like the glue or the capturing device. They capture consciousness. Sanskaras are good things through the evolution of consciousness. They're the medium by which consciousness is captured and collected and built up. So these two build concurrently. Consciousness gets more and more and more, and sanskaras get more and more and more. And what is at the root of a sanskara? At the root of a sanskara is desire, right? And what was the first sanskara? Who am I? The desire to know myself. So the root of all desire is this very whim that is driving this whole process. And it does so through sanskaras, which are always wanting something, wanting to express themselves. So this is how evolution works in Baba's account. So you can, yeah, John?
Like extinct species, we just evolved past that, you know, like the dinosaurs or something like that. And we just, our souls in general have evolved consciously beyond being in any of those other species, I guess. There's other types of...
Baba did say that if a species becomes extinct, the soul can, let's suppose there's a soul that needs to have those experiences. Tyrannosaurus Rex experience. Okay. Well, it can successfully use other forms and have that same experience. And that the flow of evolutionary progress can't be stopped. It's going to find one form or another. Here's another factor too. Baba didn't talk about this, but there are 18,000 planets with human life on it. How many must there be with reptile life? A lot more than 18,000. So if I got to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex, I take a look at Earth and say, this place is a wasteland. This is no good at all. No swamps. I'm going somewhere else. And I zoom, 5 billion light years where there are dinosaurs galore. We've got a whole universe as our canvas. I'm just assuming this. You go where you need to go. That's why I would suspect Baba's account of evolution, those kingdoms of evolution, it seems to me there's no guarantee we're going to see that in the fossil record of any given planet. Because let's suppose we're a whole bunch of frogs in a little pond, and we're doing the trip together, evolutionary journey, and it's time to go on to something else. Okay, we're going to do a jump. You wouldn't do a jump to a bird form, a fish form, but let's suppose we are anyway. But the planet we're on, it's just no good for that. So I suppose we'd go to another planet. And maybe there's some nature spirit who just Elaine comes along. Come on, come along. We zoom along through the subtle sphere. Because the subtle sphere takes no time at all, and we go to another planet where the facility is there. And then maybe, a billion years later, we come back to that original planet because it's got a facility that we need. So I don't see that necessarily Baba's narrative of evolution is going to show itself in a clear form in any one planet. Why should it? The soul's going to go wherever it needs to go.
And so just to be clear on that note, so evolution and reincarnation can happen amongst these many different planets, but only involution can occur here on planet Earth.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Evolution, reincarnation are everywhere. 18,000 with human form for reincarnation.
So my 8,400,000, 18 million?
8,400,000.
That's happening between the other 18,000 planets.
Yeah.
As far as my reincarnation.
Yeah, that's right.
The involutions, okay.
Yeah, just involution is only here.
But now that I know about Meher Baba, I may hang out here for a little while.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the assumption?
Yeah, that's the idea. Now, another thing that Baba said about the evolution. Oh yeah, I had it right here.
No,
look at that, darn.
is.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let me show it. This is the universe, and this is the eye, and that's stone form, right? That's a hole in the door. Do you understand this metaphor?
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
if you're trying to experience the universe, you need a medium. That is to say, you need an opening through which your consciousness can access the sphere, right?
Mhm.
The gross sphere. You want to experience LA, but you're living up in a shoreless ocean somewhere. That there's no opening. You need an opening. You need a body. This is the body. Because the opening is so small, stone form, it can experience only a hair on the head of the mane of the lion. That's all. But in this rooster, the opening is larger, and it can experience the whole head and mane of the lion. In human form, the door is wide open, and you can experience the totality of it. Human consciousness can experience anything. There is no limit. There is no limit. The problem is that the anything and the everything that we experience is nothing. It doesn't exist. It's a shadow. It's non-existent. That's the problem. And Baba says that very clearly in the first chapter of God Speaks. We didn't read those passages, but we talked about them. So this is a beautiful illustration of that idea. I wish I had remembered earlier.
So just before you go to that, just going back to that quick question.
Yeah.
So the amount that the soul can experience itself is kind of like through this each form of the species or what's done, the evolution process is already predetermined.
Well,
the soul can only this little tiny bit of hole is available to him to experience himself as a stone.
Yeah.
It can't go and experience himself as a rooster.
No.
Okay.
No, because
so it's like it's a hierarchical.
Yeah.
You got to go through this. There's
Yes.
So
the way you do it is by what we were talking about: consciousness, the plane of consciousness, the experience. But this is in human form, and then the state.
Yes.
So through the medium of the body, it experiences the sphere.
Yes.
And through that experience, it acquires sanskaras.
Right.
And as it acquires more and more sanskaras, the whole gets bigger and bigger.
Okay. Then you answered my question, because my next question was that what happens to the sanskaras when the soul goes through, like say, the stone form there to rooster? Is it just gets more and more, or it's deform itself and changes itself to something else?
Well, there are a lot of questions here. I'm not quite sure what the answers are, because Baba wasn't all that explicit. You must spend sanskaras even in evolution. But I think you wind up acquiring a lot more than you spend.
Okay.
So that in stone form, your sanskaras are very limited and very few. But by the time you're a rooster, you've got a very extensive body of sanskaras. For example, Baba didn't say this, but I presume this must be true. Like, I've got a physical body. And let's suppose I get a cold, and my physical body attacks the cold. Is it a virus? I think it's a virus, isn't it? And kills it, and I get well again. Well, why is it that I can do that? Because I did all those things when I was on that level.
Yeah.
You know, I was on a molecular level. I was a one-celled critter.
Yeah.
So now I'm no longer conscious of it, but I've done it all. I've earned it. I've earned this human body. The human body is a great thing. It's a great achievement.
Yeah.
And so we've gone through all those stages by acquiring sanskaras.
Wow.
All the way. I wasn't, there's just a question that I was a one-celled cell once. Heck, I was a molecule. I was an H2O molecule. You know, I did all of that. What do you think stone form and metal form is? It's primitive consciousness. We had to go through all those things. So it's only by basis of having experienced those things that we can rise on to where we are.
Yeah.
So this achievement of human form is a magnificent achievement. It takes billions of years. And no wonder. Look what we got to learn.
Yeah.
To achieve human form. Animal forms. How many different animal forms? Which last one is before human form arrives? Which last animal? What kind of animal we are coming from?
Yeah. Typically it's a monkey. Baba didn't say which one. He did say once that he was going to explain what the missing link was. But then, darn it.
We probably can refer to unconsciousness and find out.
Yeah. There is some stuff in early messages to the West about this, although it's not entirely clear.
Like how much monkey
I don't know what that is exactly.
How much monkey does.
Let me get to...
It's interesting how you like it.
Yeah, by the way, this is how the tree of life is depicted in Darwin's account, you know. Anyway, there's a lot more I can say about this, but this is a very famous depiction. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a very famous, magnificent account of a tree, except it's upside down, coming from the top down. It says you have to cut the roots of it. Baba did say, we'll get on the section here on the human form, we'll say more about this. Baba did say that actually the human form is latent from the very beginning. From the very beginning. He said even a stone is a human form. He said a stone has eyes, ears, nose, mouth, everything. It's just all folded up like a rag doll. He gave that figure. So actually the entire evolution of consciousness is simply the human form unfolding itself and standing up.
Wow.
You know that magnificent drawing by Leonardo da Vinci? You know that one?
Yeah.
That, I don't know, that just seems to me really to express the achievement of the human form, that perfect circle that encompasses it. But the form was there from the very beginning. Even Baba said in the electron, the human form was there, the complete human form. It's just all latent and all implicit. It hasn't been expressed yet. So through this tree, and the trees are the human form, but they're upside down. Their head is under the ground. So their mouth is in the roots, and their feet are sticking up into the air. And after tree form, you flop down on your belly and then gradually stand up through the evolution of consciousness. So all of that is part of evolution too. We'll say more about that next week. But, here's what Baba said about Darwin, as a matter of fact. Darwin, when he propounded the theory of evolution, based his intellectual convictions merely on science, scientific research, scientific knowledge. He never thought or even dreamt that God's hand might be involved in the process.
Yeah, he didn't see God in it.
No, and there's a lot of other things. Now, Baba's account of evolution has it that there are 7 kingdoms of evolution. No, I don't think evolutionary science would buy this at all. But and these are the ones he goes through. Okay, chapter 2 of God Speaks. I won't take the time to read passages, but you may be acquainted when people talk about God Speaks, they'll say, oh, God, that about the most, and the most next, and that kind of language. It's really chapter 2 that they're talking about. That's where that all comes up. And it's talking about the evolution of consciousness. And if you read it, pay attention to those 4 things we talked about earlier. Consciousness of body, they won't use plane, but you could say sphere or environment, having experience through that medium, being the state of experiencing yourself as that, and acquiring the sanskaras. Baba goes through that process exhaustively. And this is an important point he raises. Let's suppose, I'm in the last fish form, and then the first bird form is going to be a waterfowl, it says, okay? Or I won't do that kind of leap. I'm a turkey, and I'm on my way to becoming an ostrich. Say ostriches are next. Okay. What happens is, in my last incarnation as a turkey, I acquire a body of sanskaras. And the next form I have is that body of sanskaras represented in the next form. And that principle remains true from beginning to end. The life that you are living right now is the body of sanskaras that you acquired in your last lifetime. Right now, you're living out your last lifetime. And next lifetime, you'll be living out the sanskaras you acquired this time. And that happens all the way through the evolutionary journey, and it continues to happen in reincarnation.
I have one question about sanskaras. How Baba mentioned when you get money from somebody else, you acquire sanskaras of that people. How this happens?
Yeah, no, all interactions involve the acquisition of sanskaras, sure. That would be.
Holy cow.
Yeah. We'll be saying more about sanskaras later, although I seem to be coming to the end of the session. Maybe next time I'll start out a little bit about reincarnation and some of those things.
It's still daylight.
That's right. Yeah. So now these are some of the characteristics of the 7 kingdoms. Stone and metal, they're inanimate. Life and energy are dormant, and they're recumbent. In the evolutionary journey, the actual physical posture of the body is significant. The whole journey of evolution is so that you can stand up. It's all for that. That's one of the great achievements. I never had any children, but it makes me think that maybe when you got a kid, when do they start to walk? At age 1?
6 to
Some
9 to 1.
months.
It depends. It's variable.
I would imagine the moment a child first stands up would be a big moment.
When they pull up.
It is.
Yeah.
They can
Because
pull
that
themselves
would
up.
be recapitulating the entire evolutionary journey.
Right.
It took the entire evolution of consciousness to do
wow.
that.
How
For the human form to stand
Yeah,
up.
I can think of that. How beautiful.
Yeah. We recapitulate the whole story.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to see a kid when that a mother would really notice it.
Maybe you gotta have your own child then.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're in the room.
Something to think about.
You think I should have a kid now?
Sometimes you're in the room when that happens, and sometimes you walk in,
Yeah.
and the baby is pulled up and is beside the coffee table, and you're just, because you didn't really see it, but it happened.
It must be a great moment for the soul.
Oh, yeah.
Because it took billions of years to do that. Billions of years to stand up in form.
Wow.
So in stone form, you're recumbent. Vegetable is half animate and half inanimate. It stands erect, the head down and the feet up. And it's dependent on others for the erect position. Baba says this in God Speaks. So you can't, like as a human being, I can stand independently, I can walk around. Okay, I need an earth to stand on. I'm dependent in that sense, but I don't have to lean on something. But in a tree form, you're rooted in the earth, or in a rock, or whatever you're attached to. Worm form, here you have the animal animation happening. It includes worms, insects, amphibians, and reptiles. It's animate with a tendency to crawl. This is the posture, the crawling posture now. So after having been upright but upside down in vegetable form, in plant form, your feet up, your mouth under the ground, you flop down in your belly at this stage. Never assuming erect posture, first invertebrate, then vertebrate, experiences the struggle for life. Fish are immersed in water. We see a movement here from earth to water to air to fire. Baba explains that also. Next week we'll be seeing a lot more about this. They're immersed in water, animate and vertebrate, endowed with life and sensation, experiencing the struggle for existence. They're recumbent. He said they're about 60 degrees. He said their eyes look up. I've never fished, so I don't know if they look up. Except when they dive, they look up.
Their eyes are looking.
Yeah, that's right. Bird, associated with air and capable of flight, with the aid of 2 legs maintains an erect posture. Animal has expanded consciousness with life and sensation, sometimes herbivorous and sometimes carnivorous, has tendency to look downward with a drooping head, Baba says. In the human form, full consciousness and asserts an upright posture. These are the major kingdoms of evolution. And he has a couple of charts. Yeah, this is the kind of passage where, when Baba's describing the evolution of consciousness and the acquisition of sanskaras and the next form being the mold of the sanskaras in the last lifetime, Baba is explaining this with excruciating, agonizing, meticulous detail, all this kind of thing. And when I read it, you know what occurs to me? It's sort of like, you might ask the question, well, why, for God's sake, does Baba have to go through this so much? It can be torturous to read. And the thought that has occurred to me recently is, it's because he is this. He is the stone. He is the insect. And he experiences himself as those things, going through those experiences. And it is slow.
Wow.
You're having to do every little thing for an infinitesimal advance. And then you die. I'm an ant and I'm just creeping along, and then someone goes steps on me, and I have to get reborn. That's why he's doing it. He's showing the immensity of the journey that the soul has to go through in evolution to become conscious. So actually, I find these passages to be very beautiful that way. I find the whole book to be beautiful. But this too, that agonizing, meticulous detail, that's him. He's sort of like, that's me. This is my story. We did all of this. Now, these are the kingdoms of evolution, and I just wanted, can you see that, or is the whiteboard in the way? Is the whiteboard blocking, Carol?
No, I can see it.
Okay. I'm just struck, I can expand some of this. Okay. So here you have the unconscious Atma, and here you have Shivatma, that's a God-realized soul in full consciousness. We talked about how the whole journey of the soul is from God unconscious to God conscious, right? From the moment of the whim, unconsciousness and consciousness both got established concurrently. So that's what the whole journey is, from unconscious Atma to fully conscious. Shivatma means a God-realized soul. The whole thing. And notice that the way, this looks rather like a 7. Don't you notice that?
Oh, yeah.
And if you go to the bottom, doesn't this look rather like a 7?
Oh, yeah.
So and the 7th stage is there. These charts are really worth studying. Wow. There's really a lot in them. And what the layout of this chart seems to me to imply, there's a parallelism. That is to say, the evolution of consciousness, you have to retrace that same path in the involutionary journey. There's a parallel. And, 7 planes and 7 kingdoms of evolution. The number 7, this is another characteristic of Meher Baba's darshana, his philosophy. There's a numerological component to reality. It would seem to be so. You give a lot of examples. 7, the number 12 in circles, the number 56. There are a lot of significant numbers. It seems that the number 7, Plato was big into that, the first great question, and Pythagoras too. They saw mathematics and numbers as having some primordial constitutive reality in the structure of the created universe. Apparently it is so. I take it to be so. Now this is a rather odd, I'm going to show you one of the contradictions that speaks. Ready for it?
Yes.
I don't know if it might be a little hard for you to see, but looking at this, stones, metals, vegetation, worms, birds, and animals, man, and jumping to this, do you notice a difference?
There.
Stones and metals together, and I forget now. I've forgotten what the other one was like. Yeah, this has clubbed these two together. It's one thing. And stones, metals, worms. You notice what's missing? The fish. The fish didn't make it into this chart. But the fish did make it into this chart. And what happens? Stones and metals get clubbed together. Isn't that rather odd? Looks like the earlier, this is the first, looks like this was a mistake. They left fish out by mistake. So when they put it in, what did they do? But put stones and metals together. So when I was looking, there are different contradictions I've noticed. They have to be worked out here and there. So what strikes me is that it seems like the number 7 matters more than the exact definition of the kingdoms, doesn't it? It's like Baba wants to keep the number 7 by God.
But didn't he say at some point, or someone, that 7 was the eternal number, not 8?
He did?
Yeah, I
So
thought he
he's going
said
to keep
that.
7 even if he has to cramp. The stones and the metals had their own kingdoms, but by God, they got squished together. Hey! Yeah, Carol?
I think Baba causes disagreements and so forth in Baba groups and families. And it's all to get us to think about him.
Mm-hmm.
All it's about. And I think he put things like this. It was no mistake. I mean, people can discuss those 2 items forever.
Well,
and
I think
discussing God.
the LA board should resolve this question.
I'm sure. Start it, please. We're the first generation. Start it.
LA board is.
Are stones and metals 2 kingdoms or 1? We
God.
have to know.
Question of the universe.
Actually, I thought about this a lot, and actually this is what it's led me to. I think the really primordial thing, Baba, we haven't said this yet, but in God Speaks in a number of places, Baba says the movement between, let's say, worms and fishes is a leap. And he said there are 7 leaps in evolution. I think, what is the difference between a kingdom and a leap? I would draw an analogy. It's like the relation between a noun and a verb, is it not? A thing and an event, a thing and a movement. A leap is a movement. So what I come to feel is the really fundamental thing is 7 fundamental movements. And if you read God Speaks carefully, he says there's a leap from stone to metal, metal to vegetation, vegetation to worms. There are 7 leaps, actually, that occur. And the same would be true here. There are 7 leaps up to the 7th plane. Now,
if you have 7 items,
But it doesn't do counts.
but it adds up to being 7. Like stone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Including that.
If you start in stone form.
The 7 leaps.
7 leaps. And from here, Jivatma, gross conscious, first plane, second plane, third plane, fourth plane, fifth plane, sixth plane, seventh plane, 7 leaps.
Okay. For me, like a leap is, like in between the two.
Yeah,
I
it
only
is.
get 6.
Well, actually, but if you separate these again,
right,
you have to separate them again.
Right.
So I think this was kind of a mistake. And but the 7ness, what I take is actually its movements. That's what really is critical, not the kingdom that resulted in the movement. The Thanabhaka, that combination, the movement from one thing to another is where the 7ness comes.
So the evolution includes the dimension.
Yeah, actually, and in the 10 states of God chart, I wish we had that here. When the 10
Next week.
Yeah.
week, I think I can
When it
get-
shows evolution, which is the 5th state of God, it shows the last one is man. It's put in evolution. Because that's the culmination of evolution, is man form. Is the realization of the man form that was latent from the beginning. That's where it goes.
A quick question. I'm still here in this where you mentioned that the evolution of consciousness and involution of consciousness, they go parallel together.
That's what this chart seems to suggest. I'm just drawing an inference. Doesn't it look
Oh,
like
I
that to
see.
you?
It does. But when I read this part, I couldn't correlate this. Like there's 7 kingdoms to 7 kingdoms to 7 as plane of consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, can it be a mapping or like?
Well, I would be reluctant to go so far as
Okay,
to suppose, for example, the fishes somehow relate to the 3rd plane.
It doesn't
I'd be
seem-
reluctant to go that far.
Okay.
But in a general way, you have to go back the way you came. And who knows, maybe you do have to go back through those same kinds of sanskaras in some way.
Baba says that you become a stone. When you become a stone, you're
Yeah, that's right.
as a human. When you
That's
become
right.
a stone,
In
you're
Infinite
at
Intelligence,
the,
many times he says that.
Mhm.
Become a stone with full consciousness.
Yeah, and that'd be.
Then you'll realize God.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Says
there
that.
is I don't know, maybe we need a 4th, 5th, and 6th planar where we could say the sanskaras that you're sort of swimming your way through these days, are they the same kind of sanskaras you dealt with when you were stone, mental, vegetable? We got to know.
Are they aware of it?
Huh?
Are they aware of it? I thought most people are blindfolded.
Yeah, we need somebody who doesn't.
We need Esfandiar.
Yeah, we should have asked us. Why didn't you ask Esfandiar?
We did actually, but he was in 7th plane, so he would
I
only
see.
talk from there.
I see. Okay, darn.
Darn, he's gone now.
Well, I'm seeing it's 4:30, so maybe we should be winding it up. We didn't even get to reincarnation, so tomorrow we'll start with the reincarnation.
Okay. So only reincarnation part of the session 2 left?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll go through the next. Okay, perfect.
Reincarnation and evolution, piece of cake. For the LA group, for heaven's sakes, we need an 8th plane so that the LA group can have enough scope to express its potential.
Yeah.
And 7 planes don't give you, do that.
Tomorrow you'll have more visitors too. Some people are going to come tomorrow. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
We're off.
you.